Hello. Well, for that first one, if the sine of x is 2 square root of 5 over 5, the cosecant is the reciprocal of sine. So the cosecant of x would be 1 over 2 times the square root of 5 over 5. When we rewrite that so it's not a complex fraction, we get 5 over 2 times the square root of 5 over 5. To rationalize that denominator, we take the top and the bottom times the square root of 5 over the square root of 5. That gives us 5 square root of 5 over 10. So the cosecant would be square root of 5 over 2. Also, a quicker way to do this, if the sine is 2 square root of 5 over 5, that's the same thing as 2 over the square root of 5. So we could have just flipped 2 over the square root of 5 over and got square root of 5 over 2. For the second one, since tangent equals sine over cosine, we know that the square root of 2 over 2 has to equal negative square root of 3 over 3 divided by the cosine. So we multiply both sides by the cosine, and we get cosine of x times square root of 2 over 2 equals negative square root of 3 over 3. So we want to get rid of the square root of 2 over 2 on the left side, so we multiply both sides by its reciprocal, which would be 2 over square root of 2. That gives us the cosine of x equals negative square root of 3 over 3 times 2 over the square root of 2. Multiply them together, we get negative 2 square root of 3 over 3 square root of 2. Rationalize that denominator, we're going to multiply the top and the bottom by the square root of 2. That gives us negative 2 times the square root of 6 over 6, which simplifies down to negative square root of 3 over 3. Third problem, they tell us that the cotangent of x is square root of 3 over 2, and that cosine is negative. Okay, so since the cotangent is positive, the cosine's negative, the sine's also going to have to be negative. Cotangent is adjacent over the opposite, so we know that that's adjacent side square root of 3 and the opposite side is 2. We need to figure out what the hypotenuse is using the Pythagorean theorem. So we get 2 squared plus square root of 3 squared equals c squared. 4 plus 3 equals c squared, so c equals plus or minus the square root of 7. So the sine of x will equal the opposite over the hypotenuse, and it's going to be negative, like we said. So we get negative 2 over square root of 7. Multiply that times the square root of 7 over the square root of 7 to rationalize that denominator, and we get the sine of x is negative 2 square root of 7 over 7. Okay, last one. They tell us the cosine is 1/7 and the sine is negative. So that means our cotangent is going to be negative down here. So again, this time we have to figure out how long the opposite side is. So we know the adjacent side is 1, the hypotenuse is 7. So 1 squared plus a squared equals 7 squared. 1 plus a squared equals 49. A squared is going to equal 48 when we subtract 1 from both sides. So a is going to equal plus or minus the square root of 48, which is the same thing as 4 square root of 3. So we said we need the negative one. So we got negative. So the cotangent would equal 1. The cosine over the sine, which was, well, I guess we just do the opposite and the adjacent. Cotangent would be the adjacent over the opposite. So we get negative 1 over 4 square root of 3. Rationalize that denominator by multiplying by the square root of 3 over 3 over the square root of 3, and we get negative square root of 3 over 12.